God here. And it's football season. And it's like 100 degrees outside. Sorry about that. Welcome to Season 4 of Gods of Odds, hosted by two of my favorites, Brad Hoyseth and Dave Daba.
Welcome to the Gods of Odds. It is week number 10 of your National Football League season. That is Brad Hoyseth over there in beautiful Southern California. I am Dave Daba up in Northern California. And Brad Hoyseth, if you had to pick a most valuable player in the National Football League this year, could you even do it at this point?
Josh Dobbs. How's that? That, Dave, that was one of the most, I think I said it to you over the weekend, that, you know, I'm not a big Kirk Cousins guy, as everybody knows, but that was one of the most enjoyable wins that I've seen from the Vikings in a long, long time. Look, there, obviously there was bigger ones, the playoff win over the New Orleans at the end and that kind of stuff, but that was really a lot of fun. I mean, I haven't had that much fun actually watching the Vikings since Kirk Cousins became the quarterback, because he just drives me nuts. And to see a guy that could actually get out and run and make, a couple of like Steve Young type plays with his legs. I mean, this is what I've been crying for a number of years. Cousins has got a strong arm, but he just can't do things on his own that you need to be able to do in the year 2023.
Yeah. Brad and I differ on this one over the years. I believe in the playoff appearance sign that hangs in the stadium. And Kirk Cousins is on the verge of being a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League. He's just not that bad. That being said, the Josh Dobbs thing was just absolutely amazing. It will be interesting to see what the Vikes do going forward, if they just hand the ball over to Josh, or if they go back to the rookie, who, by the way, didn't look too bad in his first couple drives either. They're different types of players. I'm not sure, Dobbs is necessarily the long-term answer for the Minnesota Vikings, but it was really the most amazing thing I've seen the Vikings do really since that Minneapolis miracle, for sure. All right.
My first game, Dave, is the Vikings game, and it's the Saints at the Vikings. New Orleans, a 2.5-point favorite, which I found a little surprising. But at the same time, I'm going to agree with the odds makers, and I'm going to take the Saints, just because, it seems to me, Dave, like Brian Flores has the defense actually playing a little bit better for the Vikings. It's a bunch of no-name guys that are out there, but they have played a little bit better. I don't think the Saints are a great football team, but they still play really good defense, which I think might neutralize Dobbs a little bit. And so I say there's a little bit of a letdown for the Vikings. The Saints kind of need a win, so I'm going to take the Saints. I'm going to give up that 2.5.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see why you're doing that. And, it's like defenses are, Brad, a lot like new quarterbacks in the National Football League that have success early on. Take your Brock Purdy, who, had his great little run, and then defenses eventually figure that out. The same thing can be said about new defensive strategies for football teams. So I think Brian Flores at some point, when he has 8 people up at the line, 3 plays in a row, teams are starting to figure out how to beat that. And one of the ways to beat it, and I think I texted you about this, is with a bubble screen or a bubble run. And in fact, in the game last week, they scored a touchdown on one of those plays against the Viking defense. So their defense, while it's playing better, the true test of how good this defense really is going to happen in the next 8 weeks, because there's enough tape on them now if I were an offensive coordinator from the New Orleans Saints, well, I wouldn't be doing this podcast. That's one thing. I have to say, I believe, I would know, hey, here are 5 key plays when they go to this particular defensive set, and I'd be able to figure out how to deal with that. I believe in momentum in the National Football League. And I think the Vikes actually have some momentum. They currently have the longest winning streak in the National Football League. Their head coach does a fantastic job inside the organization. In Miami, with the Miami Heat, there's this thing, Brad. I know you're not a big basketball guy, but they call it the Heat culture. And I think that's what we're seeing with this Viking team, because they were 1-4 and everybody thought they were dead. And the culture, like the players didn't change minus Josh Dobbs, but beyond all of that, the players haven't changed. It's the culture, being able to get the team to stay together, game in and game out. And we know no matter what we say, this is going to be a close game. I like the Vikings in this one.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said there in terms of trending in the right direction. I mean, you and I both liked Flores when he was in Miami. We thought he got ripped off. Yeah. I remember that. He won like his last 5 games in Miami and somehow got fired, which we didn't understand. I still don't understand it. I think the kid's a good coach.
Yeah.
And they are trending in the right direction. Oddly enough, without their starting quarterback and without their starting superstar wide receiver. That's why I'm taking the Saints. Just because I'm just seeing a limited amount of guys out there that can make plays for the Vikings. That Saints defense is pretty good. The Vikings historically, going back to Blair Walsh, have had an immense amount of problems kicking the football. It feels like a field goal game, and I just feel like Saints are maybe a little bit better in the special teams than the Vikings are. And so it's a tight one, but it should be a fun one if you're a Vikings fan. They have been hot, but I'm going to go in the other direction this week. I'm going to play the devil's advocate. I'm going to take the Saints.
Yeah, if you're going to bring up Blair Walsh, I'm going to say Christian Ponder. All right, moving on. The Lions are at the Los Angeles Chargers this week. Lions are favored by 3 in this particular game. And I looked at this game, Brad, and I thought about it. I analyzed it fairly in-depthly. I think I spent a lot of time. Most time I spent looking at any of the games this week was on this particular game. And what I'm really sort of curious about is, will the Lions fans show up? Will this be a home game? You're wearing your Lions blue today. Will this be a home game for the Detroit Lions in Los Angeles? And I started to think, yes, this is the first time since the Wayne Fonz era that the Lions have been a legitimate football team. And you could even argue that they weren't back then during the Wayne Fonz era, but he did have a couple winning seasons. You got to give him his props. So I look at this team and I look at the homecoming for Jared Goff. Look, they are going to find a way to win this game for Jared Goff. This Lions team is going to definitely get back on track this week. I like them over the Chargers. Justin Herbert, he's dealing with a finger injury. We know about Staley. I would be absolutely shocked, and if you will, floored, if you, Brad Hoysap, hater of Brandon Staley, were to take the Chargers in this one.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm doing it, but I'm actually going to take the Chargers, which, kind of bucking trends, kind of like I did in the last game with the Vikings and the Saints. I have a hard time. It's one of those things, Dave, you take the Chargers and then you go in the back room and you kind of make yourself throw up. I mean, that's kind of the way I feel about it. First of all, I think this is one of the more enjoyable games to watch this week. I'm looking forward to it, Lions at the Chargers. But if there's one thing the Chargers can kind of do well, as we saw last week, is they can rush the passer. And, as we know about Jared Goff, he's not particularly fleet of foot, let's just say. I'm going to take the Bolts. I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going to take the Bolts at home, and I'm going to take the 3 points.
Yep. It's the Bolts should be way better than they are. Maybe if they had a different head coach. I've come along. I'm with you. I'm ready for a new head coach, and I don't think Kellen Moore is the answer either. So I think the Magic 8 Ball says 3 more years of rough winters for the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, in my second game, I'm going Packers at the Steelers, which, the Packers are not a very good football team, Dave. And I think the Steelers are not a very good football team either, but they just kind of find ways to win. If you look at the numbers, the Steelers defense is awful. They're like 28th in the league, but the amount of turnovers they get is immense. And so that can play such a big part in things. And, Jordan Love is a guy that loves to turn the ball over. And so the Steelers are 3-point favorites at home. They're always tough at that stadium. And, Tomlin always seems to kind of find a way for that path for that team to get into the playoffs. I don't think the Packers are playing for much. I think they're one of the worst teams in the NFC. I'm going to take the Steelers. I'm going to give that 3.
Yeah, the Packers are trying to figure out, can they end up in the Caleb Martin sweepstakes? That I think is, look, I think barring any sort of magic that happens with Jordan Love over the next couple weeks, I think the answer about who Jordan Love is as a starting quarterback in the National Football League has been answered. I don't think you can correct some of the problems that he's having as a quarterback. Look, quarterbacks have to make quick decisions. The really good ones in the National Football League are great at making quick decisions. They're great at reading defenses. And those are fundamental things that Jordan Love appears to be having trouble with. Most of the quarterbacks in the NFL can throw good balls, can throw nice passes, or have, they might not all have fastballs or sinkers or curveballs, but usually they've got a couple good pitches that they're good at. And Jordan Love struggling understanding what defenses are presenting in front of him has been the problem for this team entirely.
He's having a hard time getting it over the plate, Dave.
He just is. He is. He's like throwing it into the dugout sometimes.
Right. He's like Mitch Williams at this point.
It's terrible. Absolutely terrible. Hey, I don't know if you heard about the George Pickens thing this week, but he was gone all in.
I have a really hard time with George Pickens. To me, it sounds like he should be like a blues musician or something, doesn't it? George Pickens.
He does. If I listen to jazz radio, I would expect to hear him.
From way down in West Virginia, this is George Pickens on 94.3,
Blues that don't make you blue. Anyways, so, Pickens is going all Antonio Brown this week. Just absolutely unbelievable. He was so upset that he didn't get the game-winning touchdown pass that he stormed off. And then he scrubbed his Instagram account of anything Pittsburgh Steelers. Is unbelievable. Look, Tomlin did a great job for years preventing the media from actually reporting on how, quite frankly, off the wall Antonio Brown was. He hasn't been able to pull that off with our blues musician Pickens at all at this point. Look, Mike Tomlin, we know this team is going to end up the season, with a winning record. It's just who he is as a head coach. He gets, you want to talk about culture. We like to think that the Steelers have a really good defense, and you're absolutely right about what you said from a statistical perspective. Good at turnovers, terrible at the rest right now. And yet they're 5-3 and are probably going to be 6-3 after this week in what is arguably the toughest division in football. All right, Mr. Hoysef, I think I've got the next game of 49ers at the Jaguars. I am definitely all over the 49ers in this one. They've had a bye week. They've had a chance to get healthy. I can't tell you how many times I've seen Brock Purdy on local television this week at practicing. How many times I've seen George Kittle go over to Brock Purdy at practice and most likely was complaining about something. Look, this 49er team, there's this term that a buddy of mine used to use, and he used to say, you're up against it. And this 49er team right now, a fourth loss in a row, they are absolutely up against it. The Kyle Shanahan should be fired stories are going to hit the fish wraps, and all of the blogs and social media posts around the world if they don't beat the Jaguars in this game. I think the Jaguars, I know they have a good record. I still feel like they're a bit of a pretending team. Defense is definitely playing better. Trevor Lawrence is played better. They've got a really nice running game. They've got a series of nice weapons on the outside. There's a lot to like about the Jacksonville Jaguars team, but this is a must win. This is must see TV. This is a must win for this 49er team.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to take the Niners. I like that week off. I'm not a big fan of Shanahan, never have been, but they are starting to get healthy. And then
why you don't like 2 years in a row in the NFC Championship game?
I'm not a big fan,
like going to the Super Bowl.
I don't know. There's something about it that's missing. They have a billion guys that are great. They have so much talent. Yeah, they enhanced that talent again this week, going out and getting Chase Young.
Yeah.
I look at this roster and they shouldn't lose, right? And yet here we are. And like you said, they're on the verge of a fourth straight loss. They got to go into a Jacksonville team who's, I'm a big Doug Peterson fan. I like some of the young weapons there. They got to be looking like, hey, we can knock these guys. It'd be a big win for Jacksonville. Let's put it that way. But it's a desperate win for the Niners, and that's why I'm taking the Niners.
Yeah. Shanahan's the guy that, is convinced there are shortcuts in the world. So he gets to the stoplight, and instead of going straight, he goes around, and it takes a little longer to get where he thought he was actually going to. He doesn't use a mapping system, apparently, Brad. So in this scenario, that's my biggest complaint about Shanahan is he just overthinks things. He overcomplicates things. And then he gets very comfortable with the type of the type of players that he has on the offensive side of the ball. Yeah, the defense should be performing significantly better. I don't know what the hell is going on. I mean, I saw them destroy the Cowboys in person, 5 weeks ago. And since then it's just been the opposite. So they went out and they picked up the Commanders, Chase, was it Chase Young? And they brought him in, who, by the way, is a bit of a head case, I'll just say that. So will he fit in with 49er culture? I don't know. But I think they're missing the defensive coordinator they had last year. Those coordinators make a difference in the NFL. A lot of times as, casual fans, they overlook those things. So this is absolutely a must win for this team.
All right, I'm going on to a game that nobody is going to watch. It's Atlanta at Arizona. I'm having a hard time believing that Arthur Smith still has a job after losing that game to the Vikings. But this game, I'm playing the over-under, which is at 44. I saw an Atlanta team struggle with a Vikings defense that's not very good. I'm like you. I'm not a huge believer that Desmond Ridder is a guy that's going to, lead that team to a promised land. And Arizona, they may or may not get their quarterback back this week. And so I'm going to tell you the under on this one. I just think both of these teams are not very good offensively. They're not good on either side of the ball, which is, some people could say, well, that makes a case that you should probably take the over. But I just looked at it at 44. I thought it was a little bit high. So I'm going to take the under in that one.
Yeah, easy one here. I don't think Ritter's going to start. I think they're going to start Heineke again in that game. Arthur Smith, I absolutely love. It's like I don't understand why I can't get his running game going. I think they should. Bijan is just not. I would run the Pierce kid, or the other running back, Aguilar or whatever his name is.
How about Cordero Patterson, one of your favorites, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I think the ship has sailed on him, being a full-time running back in the National Football League. But look, the Cardinals, supposedly getting Kyler back this week. We'll just have to see, how that actually looks. This is a game outside of those two metropolitan areas. Very little people are going to watch. I will give this to the Atlanta Falcons fans last week. They were into it. I mean, that is a good fan base. They were really into that game. It would have been so much fun to have actually been at that game. It looked like one of the funner stadiums to be at last week in the National Football League. Now to the big toaster, as Chris Berman would say, in the desert. I've been to that stadium, and I do not see the Cardinal faithful, who are most likely going to be wearing their Ohio State ripoff uniforms this weekend. A lot of chances. I'm with you on the under.
Yeah, so far the Ohio State ripoff uniforms for the Cardinals have been the most enjoyable part of the Cardinals. So, there has not been much worth watching out there in the desert so far.
Yeah, are they going to go with the all black ones? That's the.
I love the black helmets, by the way.
All right. Moving on. The Cleveland Browns. Yes, they still have a football team, an actual football team in Cleveland. The Browns at the Ravens. Browns are not favored in this game. Ravens are favored by 6. I don't know, what the deal is with Deshaun Watson. I would feel differently about this game if I felt confident in Deshaun Watson as a legitimate starting quarterback in the National Football League. I suspect that he's still hurt and is still affected by whatever those nagging injuries are that kept him out. But this Cleveland Browns defense is historically good, Brad. They are a historically good defense, at least through 9 weeks of the 2023 season. So this game comes down to the Ravens defense, which is also very good, and Lamar Jackson. And who do I believe in more? Deshaun Watson or Lamar Jackson? And the answer to that question is, I believe in Lamar Jackson. Now, a lot of people have said, well, Lamar hasn't thrown the same amount of touchdowns that he threw last year. And, one of the reasons for that is pretty simple, because they get anywhere near the red zone, and instead of passing the ball, they turn into a running team. And they run the ball in for touchdowns left and right. It's the best running team in the National Football League. So I like the Ravens at this one. Plus, it's in Baltimore, and let's face it, that is also not an easy stadium to win in.
I'm going to go the other direction on this one. I don't think it's so much about the quarterbacks as, it's just an interdivisional game. I think the heat's kind of on Cleveland. You look at that division right now. The Ravens are 7-2. The next three teams are all 5-3. Cleveland has to go on the road. They have to look good. They might have to come out of there with a win. I think the Steelers are ultimately the team that are going to drop out of the playoffs from that division. I think Cincinnati's, clearly playing better, but the pressure's on Cleveland and Kevin Stefanski. And he always kind of seems to come up at the game when you least expect it. You say the difference is between the quarterbacks. I say the difference is the kickers. I'll take Justin Tucker over Dustin Hopkins any day of the week. I think it's more of a field goal game, and so I think the Ravens could win. But I 6 points was a little rich for my blood in an interdivisional game. I'm going to take the Browns and take the 6 points on the road. It's
a good argument. I'm not going to change my opinion, but it is a good argument nonetheless. Look, eventually, a offense that is really good. I'm really looking forward to watching this game, because it's going to be very interesting to see what a good team that really knows how to run the ball and scheme to run the ball does against, really historically one of the best defenses we've seen in the NFL. It is some pretty exciting stuff. The Browns are definitely an interesting organization, as you know. And I have to say, I mean, this whole Deshaun Watson thing, I think it's going to rear its ugly head again this week, and I really like the Ravens pulling this one off. Now, 6. My next game, Dave, you always talk trending. I saw something I really liked out of the Raiders last week. They're playing at home against the Jets, who I saw a lot of things about the Jets I didn't like last week. But they're a puzzling team. They're still like 500, which is amazing. But I'm gonna give you a little solid point here. You know how I like my junior college guys, Dave, and a new head football coach for the Raiders, Antonio Pierce, played football at Mount San Antonio College. People don't realize that, but that team, I thought they looked really good last week. The Raiders, it's one of the best games I've seen them play in a long time. They finally rid themselves of Josh McDaniels. It's only a 1.5 point game. The Jets are a 1.5 point favorite, which I found a little bit puzzling. I'm going to take the Raiders at home. And take that 1.5. For those people from Southern California, that is really called Mount Sac. So yeah, look, I can't even believe that this is just 1.5. Like that Vegas thinks this game is going to be that close. I mean, I love the Raiders in this game. I mean, coaching matters in the National Football League, and who your head coach matters. Eventually, talent has to win out. But the Zach Wilson experiment is just, it is what it is. And I expect he'll play better this week, because the Raider secondary, isn't as good as what he's faced recently, but they're going to get after him, and you apply any pressure to Zach Wilson and he eventually folds, like a Kenny Rogers song.
Yeah, and what we've seen, Dave, is that the Jets can't protect the quarterback. I mean, they're just awful at protecting the quarterback. And if there's one thing that Raider defense can do, they can get after it a little bit up front. But like you said, they don't really cover anybody. But that's the second part of the problem. They'll get that one with Antonio Pierce being the head coach, Dave.
Yeah, maybe the Jets should trade for Russell Wilson. Should have traded for Russell Wilson. All right. Moving on. Let's see. My next game is the Giants at the Cowboys. I don't know, 16.5 points for the Dallas Cowboys is the spread, which you have to actually give up if you want to take the Cowboys in this one. This feels like a sucker's bet to me. That, the Cowboys have done so well destroying all these other teams by so many points this year. They will certainly do that again this week against the New York Football Giants. I agree with, as crazy as that is, I can't even believe I'm going to do this. I'm going to lay the 16.5 points down on Jerry and my Dallas Cowboys, who I have predicted would end up in the Super Bowl this year, that they are going to just flat out destroy the New York Football Giants, who are starting an undrafted quarterback.
Yeah.
In Dallas.
It's, 16.5 is just, it's hard, Dave. I mean, the Giants are a mess, and they've scored 101 points all season, Dave. 101. I mean, let's not forget the Dolphins scored 70 in one game, right? So, I mean, it's been a tough year for Daboll and company. I got to believe at some point the guy's team is playing for his job. They just don't have a lot on the outside. They're not giving a lot of help to the quarterback. They haven't got a lot of weapons. The defense was good last year. They seem to have just gone missing this year. My question, as it always is it's always about the Cowboys. Which Cowboy team is going to show up? The defense has got, is really good up front. They took a big hit at safety during the course of the year. The Cowboys, they haven't been quite as good. But to me, it's always been about the offense and Dak Prescott and, those guys over there that, at the beginning of the year, I think I said I thought Tony Pollard would maybe be the number one player in anybody's fantasy football league. I thought he was going to have a big year, with Zeke Elliott gone. It just hasn't really materialized. They haven't really got the running game going. The Giants are completely inept, but I have to take the 16.5. I'm sorry. I look at that number and I go, you're going to give me 2 touchdowns and a field goal? Yeah. Practically, I got to do it.
Yeah, no, I understand. I totally get it. I wasn't as high on Pollard as you were and as a lot of other people were. Plus, the offensive line was a little banged up, coming into the start of the season. And so it's not terribly surprising to me. If anything, I think, the Cowboy team has gotten better since they got beat by the 49ers 5 weeks ago, and is improving week after week. Even in the loss against Philadelphia last week, a game that they probably should have won. It's just the Cowboys they continue to shoot themselves in the foot with, penalties and offsides and just bad clock management. Yeah, it's all the general Mike McCarthy things. When has Mike McCarthy ever been good at calling an offense that knows how to run the ball? Like it's just like, I don't know. So like when people were talking about Tony Pollard's going to have a good season, I'm like, look at who's calling the plays this year. I don't think so. So I don't know. Like this Dallas Cowboy team should not, and I hope they don't, take the Giants lightly. And if they don't, and they come out fired, they'll actually cover this. So that's what I'm betting on.
Yeah, to me, it was just a big number, and it's it's an NFC East game. There's a lot of history there, and at some point the Giants are going to show up and play for Daboll. If not, he's going to get fired, which I think is right around the corner if they don't at least start looking better.
Yeah.
They might not win, but just look better. If you got to keep games like this against your rivals within 17 points. Otherwise, the fan base just gets upset, and pretty soon you're getting your walking papers. All right, I'm going to move on to my next game here. Wait, was that my game or was that yours, Dave?
No, I think you're moving on to your last game of the week.
Yeah, my last game is Houston at Cincinnati. I'm playing the over-under, which is at 47. And to me, Dave, I look at both these teams, and these offenses are hitting on all cylinders right now. Neither team has got what I would consider a great defense. So I'm going to play the over in this one. I mean, I look at Houston and what they're doing there with C.J. Stroud and throwing for 470 yards and all that stuff. And, Cincinnati seems to have turned a quarter offensively. It looks like Burrow's healthy now. And, my only question mark there is Jamar Chase hasn't practiced this week. So if you're going to bet this game, maybe folks out there wait till later in the week and find out what the status of Chase is. He's had a back, and I'm betting that he's going to play just because I think he's a gamer, the kid. But Houston's at Cincinnati at 47. I'm going to take the over. I just think both these offenses are kind of hitting on all cylinders right now.
Yeah, I was going to take the under. I'm going to go ahead and flip-flop and agree with everything you just said on the over. I'm generally in over-under scenarios. I tend to bet the overs more successfully throughout my lifetime. I just wasn't sure with the Houston offense if I felt like they were going to have a letdown after last week. CJ Stroud, though, I mean, I could not have been more wrong about CJ Stroud than I have been, coming into this season. I mean, I followed him closely at Ohio State. I saw a lot of his game. I saw the first game he played at Ohio State, at least on television. I am very impressed by CJ Stroud's decision making. One pick all season for a rookie quarterback in the National Football League entering the 10th week of the season, Brad. I mean, and it's nice young wide receivers. The defense is suspect. I love Joe Burrow. He looks healthy. T. Higgins finally got involved a little bit the last couple weeks. Regardless of Chase or, to chase or not chase is not a question for me at this point. I think they have plenty of other weapons. That I agree with you. I like the over.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit more on CJ Stroud. I mean, yeah, the numbers are great. You look at the numbers and you go, wow, this kid is putting up eye-popping stuff. But like you said, it's really the decision-making. And to me, I watch him a little bit now. And, there's certain people you watch and you just go, he's got that it about him. That's something about him that he just seems to make plays when you need a play made. He's got the mobility. He's got all the arm skills. He doesn't have an overwhelming amount of great players around him. I mean, it's not like they got a superstar wide receiver there. He's making plays and using all his tools, and he's using tight ends and he's getting the ball to the running backs, and it just seems like at every turn the kid makes the right decision, and at some point you just tip your cap and you say he's a pretty good football player. And so I think that's going to be an entertaining game in Houston there. They got something to really cheer about.
Yeah. And I like quarterbacks that throw the ball down the field and can throw the ball down the field. And CJ is definitely one of those guys. I mean, Brock Purdy had great stats, through the first 10 games of his career as well. But not good at throwing the ball down the field. And CJ Stroud is. And I think there's, sky's the limit for this kid. He's got a really compact throwing motion, which ultimately leads to a quick release, which is take a look at it, Brad. It's a little awkward looking. Nobody talks about it, but it is. And he's very effective with it. So I'm with you on this. All right, moving on to the last game of the top 10 games worth actually spending some money on this week, according to the gods of odds. Broncos at Bills. Bills favored by a whopping 7.5 points in this one. This spread is just way too high for me. But this is more of I don't believe in Sean Payton and Russell Wilson can get along. I don't believe that they're going to go on the road to Buffalo. Buffalo has to get itself back on track. They should be able to do that in this game. Simply put, this is maybe less about Buffalo and more about the Broncos still being a bad football team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to agree with you on what you're taking. You're taking the Bills. But I think it's more about the Bills, really. I mean, they have not looked good, Dave. We've talked about it, for a long time, that they're the same team today that they were 3 years ago. Nothing's changed. And as a result, I don't think the Bills are going anywhere in the playoffs. But they have to win, and they have to win convincingly this week. I get a sense this is where they turn it around. It's a big line. I agree with you. 7.5 is a lot, but I think the Broncos are still the Broncos. They're not very good. That Bills defense is still capable of turning you over, and I believe Russell will turn it over this week. The Broncos have played a little bit better football, which, has me pumping the brakes a little bit. But I'm going to take the Bills. I'm going to give that 7.5.
Yeah, it is. It's a tough. It is a tough game, because the spread is, I think we all agree a little too high. It would be a slam dunk at 5. At 7.5, you're starting to, Russell Wilson hasn't been that bad, and they're coming off of a bye, and healthy, and all of that. Buffalo this is sort of like the 49ers here. They have to win this game, and they have to win it convincingly, and that's why I'm taking them in this one.
Yeah, and Dave, the Bills are 4-1 at home. They're a better football team at home, so they haven't been very good on the road, but in Buffalo they've been pretty darn good. And I mean, you look at their numbers; they've scored 80 more points than they've given up. But they're just one game above 500. So I think they're a little bit better than what their record indicates. I still don't think they're a threat to go anywhere, just because they've never developed any type of running game, and they're the same team as they were 3 years ago. But I think the Broncos are not a very good football team, and that's what this comes down to for me. And the 7.5 is rich, but yeah, I just feel like it's just when you kind of say the Bills are done, and they kind of show up and they make you believers again. So yeah. I'm going to take the Bills.
Plus, I respect an organization that is in Buffalo that decides it's finally going to build a new stadium, Tennessee Titans, and it actually decides it's going to build an outdoor stadium versus the Tennessee Titans, who are going indoors in their new domed facility when that gets done. Absolute nothing but respect for that Buffalo Bills organization. They have to get this thing right for sure. All right, Mr. Hoysev, those are our top 10 games worth actually spending some money on for week number 10. Any parting words about Thursday night football this week?
Hey, I don't know. The Bears are kind of entertaining to watch these days. Tyson Bagent is, we just took some shots at the kid a couple of weeks ago, Division II guy. We hadn't been any kind of showed up to beat Tyson Bagent last week through some picks, but he's kind of fun to watch. And we talked a little bit earlier about the Caleb Williams. I think you called him Caleb Martin again. I don't know.
Oh, God, I keep making that mistake.
I don't know. Caleb Martin sounds like a basketball
player. And a correction, you're not wearing a Detroit Lions blue shirt. It's a Buffalo Bills blue shirt today.
Could be. But the point I was trying to make is I think there's more than Caleb Williams out there this year, Dave. There's like 5 quarterbacks in the Pac-12 alone that, to me, all look like they can really play. And so there's a lot of quarterbacks, I think, available in the draft this year. I think the Vikings will be a team that probably grabs one. There's a number of teams that have a need. And, I don't think it's just the Caleb Williams sweepstakes anymore. And Caleb Williams doesn't look great at times. So, there's a kid in Washington. There's a kid in Utah. There's a lot of guys in the Pac-12 alone that look like they can play football at the next level.
Yeah. Lot of strong talent out there, and Caleb, not even going to just say the last name because I don't want to mess it up again. Caleb is a little nonchalant in his approach, and the NFL moves considerably faster than most college football games, and so in his defense, I mean, like USC has their defense is terrible. So, he's got to play a certain way in order to keep the team in the game, which is different. So I think, it's a pretty safe bet that he'll be, pretty good in the National Football League. But like, if you're the Carolina Panthers and you're 10 weeks into the season, did you make the right decision at quarterback? Are you regretting that at this point? I mean, it's probably a little bit early to say that, but behind closed doors, are you like, we made a mistake?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one with Bryce Young. I want to see Carolina put some stuff around him.
Yeah.
There's not a lot there. I mean, Bryce Young is a young kid. It's kind of hard for me to stomach the fact that they've thrown him out there to the Wolves with really not a lot around him. The kid Jordan Love, on the other hand, for the Packers, he's been there a few years now, and he got a chance to watch one of the greats of all times, and doesn't resemble him whatsoever. So, I mean, the quarterback is a tricky one. You also never know really what's in a guy's heart. They get drafted early, they make a bunch of money, and all of a sudden, maybe they get lazy and they don't really care as much as they used to when they were kids. So there's so many factors involved in being a great quarterback. And I don't know, Bryce Young, the early indications are that maybe he's not the guy. But, the early indications were that Brock Purdy was the guy, and now defenses have kind of figured him out. It's a tricky game. Quarterback is a tricky position, but it looks on paper anyways like there's a bunch of guys, like it could be one of the great quarterback years for college football. Yeah. Also, the kid in Oregon State is a great player. Yeah. There's just the Pac-12 is loaded.
Yeah. Ton of opportunities out there for quarterbacks this in the next year's draft for sure. If you're looking for one and you're a National Football League team, it's
are your Minnesota Vikings going to be looking for a quarterback, Dave?
Oh yeah. They are for sure. I think it's.
How did you feel? How did you feel about all the guys in Minnesota there wearing their Kirk Cousins t-shirts before that game last week?
I thought that was a big part of the Viking culture. I thought that was a nice touch. Brad, Kirk Cousins has a lot of street cred that you don't give him cred for. So go back and watch the Netflix special he was on, quarterbacks. He's not as bad as you think he is. Let's just put it this way. Like the Vikings would would not have been as good as they've been over the last couple years without Kirk Cousins. For years,
1-0, baby. They're 1-0 without him.
Yeah. Hey, I'm happy to go on a Super Bowl run now without him to prove myself wrong. It's doubtful, but I would be happy. All right, that is it for this week's always enthralling version of Games of Gods of Odds. That is Brad Oysef saluting the world over there in beautiful Southern California. I am Dave DeVop in Northern California, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing week.